Committees and Caucuses. The Committee on the Judiciary. Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security. Subcommittee on Immigration and Border Security. The Committee on Homeland Security. Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Infrastructure Protection, and Security Technologies. Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Intelligence. The Committee on the Budget. Congresswoman Jackson Lee serves in a number of additional leadership roles. Chief Deputy Whip, Democratic Caucus. Vice Chair, Congressional Progressive Caucus. Former Whip, Congressional Black Caucus. Co-Chair, Congressional Afghanistan Caucus. Co-Chair, Congressional Children's Caucus. Co-Chair, Congressional Pakistan Caucus. Co-Chair, Congressional Nigerian Caucus. Co-Chair, Congressional Jazz Caucus. Congresswoman Jackson Lee is a member of over 60 congressional member organizations, including Bicameral Congressional Caucus on Parkinson's Disease, Bipartisan Congressional Task Force on Alzheimer's Disease, Bipartisan Task Force on Non-Proliferation, Congressional United Services Organization, USO, Caucus, Congressional Afghanistan Caucus, Co-Chair, Congressional African Partnership for Economic Growth Caucus, Congressional Algerian Caucus, Co-Chair, Congressional Arts Caucus, Congressional Asthma and Allergy Caucus, Congressional Bike Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus, Energy and Environment Task Force, Co-Chair, Congressional Black Caucus, Judicial and Civil Rights Task Force, Co-Chair, Congressional Brain Injury Task Force, Congressional Caucus for Freedom of the Press, Congressional Caucus for Women's Issues, Congressional Caucus for Women's Issues, Task Force on Women of Color, Co-Chair, Congressional Caucus on Brazil, Congressional Caucus on Drug Policy, Congressional Caucus on Ethiopia and Ethiopian Americans, Congressional Caucus on Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorders, Congressional Caucus on Global Road Safety, Congressional Caucus on India and Indian Americans, Congressional Caucus on Missing, Exploited and Runaway Children, Congressional Caucus on Nigeria, Congressional Caucus on the Judicial Branch, Congressional Caucus on Turkey, Congressional Caucus to Fight and Control Methamphetamine, Congressional Children's Caucus, Co-Chair, Congressional China Caucus, Congressional Coastal Caucus, Congressional Correctional Officers Caucus, Congressional Czech Caucus, Congressional Diabetes Caucus, Congressional Fire Services Caucus, Congressional Fraternal Caucus, Congressional French Caucus, Congressional Friends of Canada, Congressional Glaucoma Caucus, Congressional Heart and Stroke Coalition, Congressional High Technology Caucus, Congressional International Anti-Piracy Caucus, Congressional Internet Caucus, Congressional Iraqi Women's Caucus, Congressional Jobs Now Caucus, Congressional Mental Health Caucus, Congressional Native American Caucus, Congressional Nigerian Caucus, Co-Chair, Congressional Pakistan Caucus, Co-Chair, Congressional Port Security Caucus, Congressional Portuguese Caucus, Congressional Progressive Caucus, Vice Chair Liaison to the Black Caucus, Congressional Propane Caucus, Congressional Pro Sports Caucus, Congressional Qatari American Caucus, Congressional Refugee Caucus, Congressional Singapore Caucus, Congressional Small Business Caucus, Congressional Soccer Caucus, Congressional Texas Caucus on Shale Oil and Gas, Congressional Taiwan Caucus, Congressional Task Force on Tobacco and Health, Congressional Victims' Rights Caucus, Congressional Vision Caucus, Congressional Wildlife Refuge Caucus, Congressional Wireless Caucus, Democratic Steering and Policy Committee, Region 6 Representative, Diversity and Innovation Caucus, Friends of Finland Caucus, Friends of Job Corp Congressional Caucus, Friends of Norway Caucus, Green Schools Caucus, Helsinki Commission, Home Health Caucus, Home Hunger Caucus, House After School Caucus, House Democratic Caucus, Task Force on Competitiveness, House Manufacturing Caucus, House Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Caucus, House Tech Accountability Caucus, Iran Human Rights and Democracy Caucus, Kenya Caucus, Latino Jewish Congress, Law Enforcement Caucus, Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual and Transgender Equality Caucus, Malaria and Neglected Tropical Diseases Caucus, National Guard and Reserve Components Caucus, Next Gen 911 Caucus, Out of Afghanistan Caucus, Out of Iraq Caucus, Out of Poverty Caucus, Seniors Caucus, the Congressional Award Foundation, Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, U.S.-China Working Group,